This is going to be an introduction first to dashboards, and then the second part after our break will be a relative time demo, which apparently I missed my slides a little bit at the beginning. Again, our regular disclaimer that if we say anything about what's coming in the future, it may not actually happen, but I don't think we'll say too much like that. So welcome, everyone. My name is Sonia Fournier, and I'm a senior training and consultant with PMsquare. I've been doing Cognos for, I guess, almost 20 years now. Started with the desktop versions, and I've worked all the way through the web stuff, and I've been doing our training for almost all of that time, along with consulting. So I've worked with quite a few of you here in the room. I also run our training practice, so if you are looking for training sessions, hands-on, or guided mentorship, it would usually be me or Randy in the back who would come out and visit you, or we do our classes online as well. Let me see what we have here. So I did, for this workshop, I pulled together some of the material from our dashboards class, and I added in some new features that sort of released since the last time we updated the dashboards class. So there's some new content that we're going to be taking a look at as well. So in this first part, in the sort of stuff before the break, we're going to take a look at how we use the new dashboard tool in Cognos. Probably new for some of you. Some of you may have already had some experience with it. If you saw the tool before 11.1, it's much better at this point. So so I hope you haven't written it off. It is a good little tool. And we're going to take a look at kind of how we work through the actual tool. Now, if you did data modules with Ryan this morning, we did a lot more talking and a lot less hands-on stuff, which was good. I think we answered a lot of questions. We were able to get a lot of really good content from it. What I'd like to do is, I'm going to do what Ryan said he was going to do. I'm going to cover a little bit of material, and then I'm going to put you into workshops right away. This one breaks into two kind of independent exercises that we're going to work through. So if you do finish what we have here, you can go get the document from Randy in the back, and you should be able to work through it. Randy's just standing at the back there, and he'll happily jump to help you. You're welcome to. You don't need a whole lot of guidance to work through what we have here. What I will say as well is that this is a great time to play with dashboards. So I gave you a little script to follow. Feel free to take it wherever you want with that. So if you want to try adding in other features, or you want to get some sort of guidance on adding in some of, this tool is designed for business users, and the whole point of it is for you to explore your data. From the beginning, I've kind of argued that it shouldn't be called dashboards, it should be called exploration, because it's really a tool where business users can drag and drop and see what happens, see what data they get, see what insights they get, and it really should be easy. So from when the tool first released, IBM said, you don't need training on this. This tool is so easy, you don't need training. I would argue that may not be 100% true, but I think that it is a tool where you will learn the most about this tool by fooling around with the tool. So do feel free to do that. We have lots of experience. I think there's some other consultants coming down later too, and we have some people in the room who've had a lot of experience with it. So if you want to try something with this, like I said, feel free to step off the script. If you've never tried it before, it's good. It gives you the steps that you can follow. But if you want to try something completely new and you want to just fool around with the data, let me know and I can give you a data source you can work with too if this isn't going to do it. So we'll get started, and I'll take you through the basics, and then I'm going to, as I said, I'm going to set you free and let you play around. I will do what Ryan did. If a great question comes up from the group as we're going through, we'll kind of stop and show you, and we'll sort of see how we end up after that. So just before we do dive in, how many people have worked with the dashboard tool so far? Some of you? What were your general opinions or thoughts or questions or anything before we dive into the actual demo? Or should we not share that? Is that, go ahead, Paul. Yeah. Right. Right. So just to repeat what Paul said, like I said, this tool is an excellent exploration tool, and it's kind of poorly named because people have a very formal, polished view of a dashboard in their head. It's not that. It really isn't. So that's still Report Studio or report authoring, where you can really pixel perfect design yourself a beautiful interactive dashboard. This tool is extremely interactive. It's extremely easy to get something, but it isn't always easy to get exactly. Like if you go in with a very fixed idea of what your dashboard is going to look like, it is much harder to get that. That's what I will say for sure. I always use a story. My 12-year-old daughter and my son were arguing about something one day, and he said, "Things just aren't going my way." And she kind of turned to him and she's like, "Well, maybe you're not going things way." So I always think whenever I think that, like, if you can kind of put that idea to dashboards, if you go the way that the dashboard tool wants you to go, you will enjoy it a lot more. If you have a very fixed idea of what this should look like, really report authoring is where you should be at that point. So that's kind of how I'll preface this. That said, with 11.2 and on, it is much better, and it does have an awful lot more capability to customize it to look more like you want it to look. But just remember, it still is an exploring tool. So I think as long as we know what we're looking for and what we're looking at when we get into this tool, I think it makes it a little easier to kind of jump in and get to kind of understand what we're looking for. I hope I didn't sell it badly for that. Anybody else? Any other experiences with dashboards that you wanted to kind of share, or anything that I know, Morgan, you had your hand up at the before? Yeah. Right. 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 Yeah. Right. Right. So same deal. Not a formal, like, not what we thought of as a dashboard tool necessarily. And then I'm sure that if you've built one in the past, you may have run into this, but you can't really start at you don't really start with a report and move into a dashboard. It's kind of the other way around. You'd start at that visual, and when you know you need more information, you'd move back into the reporting to get the kind of depth that you would want from there. There are a couple of little tools now within the dashboard where you can copy what you started, like where in 11, I don't know which version of 11.1.2.3, somewhere in there, where you can take, let's say I build a visualization and I really like it, but I don't have the right content. Like I can't build the rest of the stuff that I need. You can actually copy it and paste it into a report now. So that's a huge deal where we used to have to then go recreate all that stuff in report authoring. You can now copy from the dashboard right into the report. I think I'll probably be able to demo it. I'm not sure if I have the right version up right now or not, but we can take a look from there. Any other thoughts or comments on dashboards before we dive in and take a look at what they are? We're all good? All right. So this is hopefully will be very informal. If you have questions, thoughts, comments, please do jump in. My favorite thing about Bacon is learning from each other. So I think it's such a great opportunity to see people who've really been doing this stuff in the wild. If you have questions, do ask. And if you have answers and I don't have it, please jump in as well. I'm always happy to share the stage. All right. So we're going to take a look in this section first at just kind of how we approach the tool. So we'll take a look at using a dashboard. We'll take a look at assembling, like putting together our own dashboard. We'll take a look at, very quickly, adding tabs. Click a button, all done. We'll look at different visualizations and what you can change from there. We'll take a look at filters and how we can add them to our reports. And then we'll take a look at putting in navigation paths. I know that we may add some new I know some people were saying they're going to come to the second part of this. So we'll kind of save the relative time stuff for the next section. But that's one of the nice new features if you're using the data modules. I want to show you how you can use the relative time stuff that we have in a dashboard, and there's some really real power in there. All right. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the slides. We'll send these out to you afterwards, but just these are kind of like the highlights of where we're going. So we've kind of talked around this a little bit, but the dashboard is a new tool that added in the 11 family for exploring your data, for it's business user driven. So the idea is kind of out of the box, everyone gets access to dashboards. Now, I know a lot of companies are locking some of that stuff down, and we're not allowing a lot of the kind of exploring, but out of the box, dashboards was designed to be for your end user. It's a less of a reporting tool and more of an exploring tool, as we were talking about. It's all web-based. So again, this is the second kind of thing we sometimes have to consider when we're building quote-unquote dashboards. This tool and the output it creates are online only. So you're not going to create a PDF. You're not going to create a Excel file. This is a tool for interacting with your data online when we're in here. And then you could even build your dashboard on a tablet. So the idea with this is it's online, data-driven, and it has kind of smarts built into it to help you not have to know a lot when you're starting to build one of these contents. Sort of along those lines, if you do need dashboard, somebody comes to you and say, I need a dashboard, there's a number of ways to get it within Cognos. So the obvious place seems to be go to the dashboard tool, but it's not always the answer. If you need pixel perfect, everything stays in the same place, you want to send it out to Excel, you want to send it to a PDF, you're going to email it to somebody, it's a report authoring, a report studio report. If you need to have just a lot of interaction and you want it to be very flexible and you want users to be able to switch it around and do what they want, then it would be a dashboard tool. And then there's the old legacy tools like Cognos Workspace or other things where you can still kind of portal pages where you can still interact with the data and create a dashboard. When we start to do this, as I said, it's always online. So we're always going to be in one of the web browsers when we're using it. And for this tool, it doesn't matter which one. So Chrome, IE, Firefox, whatever, Edge, whatever you're looking for. The dashboard tool seems to work in all of them. So yay, finally. You don't have to fuss on that. If the user wants to modify the dashboard and save the content, there's an edit button just like in the other tools that you would have within Cognos. And then so if you created a dashboard for them, they could go in and edit and drag their own content in and create new tabs and work with it that way if you've enabled all of that access. If you don't want them to save over top of it, then you would obviously put it in a folder they can't save into or something along those lines. There are ways to disable the edit button, but out of the box, you would get to edit a dashboard as you go through. When you're building a dashboard, the coolest feature in this product, quote unquote, Cognos BI geeky kind of cool features, is that when you drag something into the display, it will pick the display type for you. So if I drag just a measure into the display, it will put it as a summary. If I grab a measure and some text, it'll probably put it in as something like a bar chart or a column chart. If it has time, it might put it in as a line chart. And so one of the trickiest things when I'm trying to teach new users how to use reporting is that they don't know where to start. They don't know, do they need a bar chart? Do they need a pie chart? Do they need a list? Do they need a crosstab? So what this does is it says, well, looking at your data, here's the best answer for this. So you can kind of skip that step of having to kind of teach users what to do. It will give them their data in some view that it thinks makes sense. If you don't like it, you can absolutely switch it. So that's one of the nice features, and it's pretty easy to do so. When we start with a dashboard, we start with a template, and then we can add our content to it, and you can switch it later. It's a very easy switch from there. So we'll see how we can go and put this together. You can use, so the other neat thing about a dashboard is you can use almost any source possible within here. So you can write, so if you upload an Excel file, you can immediately build a dashboard. So you don't need to have any fancy, nobody has to model anything for you or anything else. You can take an uploaded spreadsheet and immediately go into a dashboard and create a dashboard from it. You can create it from a data module. You can create it from a package that you've already created. So if you have an old Cognos 10 package that you've upgraded to Cognos 11, you can build a report, a dashboard based on that. The only caveat to that is that you do need to have a JDBC driver set on the data source so that you can use the old package on there. So you don't have to move the package into the kind of dynamic mode or anything like that. It just has to have the JDBC driver. So it's pretty simple to make that happen usually. And then you could also use cubes. So if you have a PowerPlay cube or a TM1 cube or something that's dimensionally modeled, you can use it in here as well. And that hopefully we'll see it on the roadmap tomorrow during the keynote, but hopefully we're going to start to see some more cube analysis type functionality moving into dashboards. We're not quite there yet. That's one of the kind of, you can still build it, but you have to know a little bit more about building it within there. Hopefully that'll be one of the, fingers crossed, that's one of the things that's going to be on the roadmap. So that you could take your old PowerPlay cubes, bring them into the dashboard and explore them the way we used to in PowerPlay. So hopefully we'll see that. All right. So I'm just going to jump in quickly, show you a couple things, and then I'm going to let you get started and do some demos with this. So when we come into the tool, as we mentioned earlier, on this training server, we've kind of opened it up so that you're coming in as an anonymous user, just so that we didn't have to manage passwords for everyone. That will mean there are a couple of little things you can't do. And in the steps, I'll show you kind of what the result would be if you weren't an anonymous user. So like I said, don't set your servers to be anonymous. We did it for our training option here. But in the notes, it may say, hey, you can't do this, but here's what it would look like, just so you know if there's a couple things. So we're going to go in eventually, and I'll set you loose in just 1 minute. I created a data module. Just a simple uploaded spreadsheet, had a couple of fields in there and a couple of tables where we can build our package. So it'll show you how to find it in the exercise. We are going to go in and, if I can click the right button here. We're going to go in and create a dashboard from our data module. So there's a couple different ways to create a dashboard. You can do it using, you can find the package you want to report on or the data you want to report on and click Create Dashboard. Or you could click the new plus button and choose to create a dashboard from there. So either way, whatever you're going to do. I'm going to do it this way just quickly so we can get into the data. When you come into the dashboard tool, you'll have the option to pick a template. And this is just the first tab's starting point when you're working in here. And if it's not what you want, you can switch it around. You can start with a blank one and put things wherever you want, or you can start with one that's been already defined. And then you can, as you drag and drop, it'll fill the space and everything will be nice and neat on there. So it's completely up to you as you work through. Now, what I want it to do is very quickly put a dashboard together that's really functional and show you how fast it is to build a dashboard or an exploring tool and just see what happens when you do that. So if I take the order information, and you'll get a chance to, as I said, do this. Let's say I wanted to look at the revenue number for my data. If I grab revenue, and it's a measure, and I drop it over into one of these displays on the side, you'll notice there's a nice little arrow here that says drop here to maximize. So this is the, if you just drag it over and let it go, it will just sort of sit floating free in your display. If you drop it on top of those arrows, it will fill the whole space that it has access to. So it's a nice little way to quickly keep everything neat and clean when you're working here. So when I drag this over, it gives me a revenue number, and it picked the display type. So for those of you who built reports in the past, it kind of picked a singleton. It's a summary. It summed everything up for me. If I want something different, I can switch the display from there. Now, the number that it added here is a bit, it's not very dashboard friendly. It's a big giant number, doesn't really mean a whole lot to me. But I'm going to set up a whole bunch of interactive stuff that's going to happen on this dashboard. So when I format it, I don't want to format it and say, well, I want it to be 3.061M and fix that, because when I start to put some filters on this, I want it to automatically switch around for me. So what we're going to do here, see if I can set this where I can talk, is we can go in and format this by using the data format button here, and you're going to get a chance to do these exactly, where I can say, well, this number should be a currency, and then we have this nice little feature called abbreviate. Is anybody else's ears ringing? No? Okay. So if we choose abbreviate, what you'll see here is it will automatically change this to a more readable number. So behind the scenes, it's just formatting, but it's going to change my display. If I filter this down to one particular product line in one particular state for one particular month, this number will be dynamic, and it will go from billions down to maybe thousands, and it will display it that way. So it's a really nice feature that I don't have to worry about formatting it with scale or anything fancy like that. It will just automatically change that for me. So I love that feature. So that's there. The other thing, for those of you who are in any version of Cognos before, I think 11.1, you can format this for currency so that it will display the dollar sign. And I always think that's a ridiculous thing to have to tell somebody, because you think, oh, of course I can put a dollar sign on one of my measures, but you couldn't before that version. So 13 versions where you couldn't format into currency. So all right. So that's one of the options we can do as we display. Now, the other neat feature we have here, and we're going to get a chance to go play with these, is you can take something like the retailer type, and if you drag it into one of the other displays at the top, so this is text, so a measure turned into a summary. If I drag retailer type, and it's going to be all crammed in here, but just bear with me, you'll see that a little list object that appears inside of here. This has changed over the version, so depending on what version of Cognos you have, this would have either given you a little list object, or it might have given you just a what looked like a value prompt from if you're used to Cognos reporting. So you can switch those back and forth if you'd want something that doesn't look the same as what I have here. But you'll notice I have those different retailer types. Now, I'm just going to stretch this because my resolution is so bad. But you'll see here, if I click on eyewear store, it will automatically filter every other object on the display that came from the same data source. So you'll see here that eyewear store had $126 million in revenue for all time, whatever I'm looking at. And as I click around, you'll notice that it's dynamically changing. Now, in reporting, that would have taken me quite a bit of time. It wasn't hard to do, but I would have had to build a query object. I would have had to put a parameter on it. I would have had to set up the object to have a value prompt. And you watched me do it. I dragged it over. It was automatically connected so that it automatically filtered as I was clicking through. So for a business user, this is super easy. They can just go in and drag and drop, and if I click on something, everything changes from here. So that's another really great feature of this. I'm just going to zip that back down. Here. Does anybody have any questions about those two kind of little features so far of the drag and drop? Like I said, if you're thinking, oh, that's pretty easy, it is pretty easy. So those are the neat little features. If you pick two things, so let's say I pick revenue type retailer type and revenue, and I drag both of them to the big center piece in here, and I drop it in, Cognos is going to look at the data and said, hey, you took text and a measure, probably going to put a bar chart in for you, or a column chart, whatever we're calling it. And you can see that it put it in here, and again, my resolution's terrible, but as I click through, you'll see that these are, so the chart is highlighting, and the number is filtering. Had I picked something that wasn't in the display, let's say I'm in here and I pick product line, and I pick camping equipment, you'll see that the, combo, but as I click on the different objects, you'll see the filters apply or the data will change the display that we're looking for. So without a lot of effort, I can put together something that works pretty well. Let me see if I can do this. If I get something you can see. No. Again, we'll click off of this in a second, but so we can start to put together something that will actually give you a set of data or a dashboard that's there. Now, this is one tab of a dashboard. If we click the plus button, you can have more than one display on here, so you can have multiple charts that you can work with. I'm very quickly going to just throw something in here for you. So let's say I take the retailer country and the gross profit, and I drag those to the display over here. There you go. So another great feature of dashboards is the ease of adding maps to the tool that we're looking at. So if we're trying to put maps into the dashboard, I picked something that was identified as regional data, and I added it to the display with a measure, and it flipped it into a map for me. Now, will that work every time in your world? It'll depend on how your data is set up. So, I'm using standard country names. It works beautifully when I pull it into a map. So if you make all your reports on the Go sales data, you're totally great. You'll get maps every time. Within your own data, as long as your regional data sort of fits the standard regional information that's there, then you have a pretty good chance that it'll build maps pretty well for you. So you can't use country codes that you made up yourself. But if you use country codes that kind of fit the general standards of it's not Cognos standards, but the mapping standards, you should get good maps that display for you. Now, what's really nice with the maps is if we start to filter on the maps, so let's say I decided to filter, and I decided to filter all tabs on, let me get rid of gross profit here. Let's say I decided to filter on, I'm looking for the United States here. As you filter the data, it will refocus the map. So I didn't do anything fancy here. I filtered on the United States, and now you're seeing United States in the display. So it's put together the map. Had I had something like states on here, let's see if it'll do this. We'll add our states in here. Ignore the dots on this one for right now, but let's put it in as points. But if I do this, now I'm looking at the state data that I would have. So some really nice ways to very quickly put something like a map onto your data. So again, lot of options that you can work with within here. So how many here worked with have dimensional data in their organization? So cubes from the past, or TM1, or anything that kind of DMRs? Yeah. So one of the things we could always do in any kind of cube source was drill up and drill down. And any type of exploring tool with your users, this is key, because that was great. So when I was on the country, I was curious what the state numbers look like. What I had to do was go modify the display, take off country, put in state. And that's great if you're a report developer, but it's trickier if you're going to be a business user going in using it. So this is the last thing I want to show you before you do the exercise. But one of the best new features in 11.1 is the ability to add what we call navigation groups. So for those of you who are cube people, it's drill down, drill up paths, that sort of thing, that are even more powerful. So what we can do as a business user in a dashboard is we can say, I want to have, if I click on year, I want to go down to a quarter. If I click on quarter, I want to go down to month. If I click on month, I want to go down to a day. This is something we couldn't do in regular reporting before now. So I just wanted to show you how to do that, and then you're going to get a chance to do it in the exercises as well. So I'm going to do the kind of obvious, I'll use, what did I put in the display here? retailer type. So I'll do retailer type and retailer name to start, and then we can do year, and we'll show how to work through both of those, and you'll get a chance to use them. So in our model, there's a number of ways to do this, but on our side source package, we can click on the kind of the highest quote unquote level we want to use and create a navigation path. And for those of you who haven't had cubes before, this isn't something that you've had access to, but it is a really powerful function that you can, if you give it to business users, they can explore their data in a much deeper way without having to come back to you and ask for help all the time through here. So let me show you how to do this. So on the retailer type, I can click the ... button that we use for their action or more or whatever we're calling it. I can create a navigation path. And the navigation path is then going to put the first item that I'm going to use inside of here. If I go to retailer type again, I can put the retailer's name, and then maybe I could go down to the retailer code through here. Now, this doesn't have to be hierarchical. So you could put retailer type, and then I could jump over to the location, and then I could jump over to the product type. And that's where the superpower comes in here. That wasn't possible to do. Well, it was possible, but not easy to do in something like a cube. This is, as a business user, I can add this path into my data, and I would give it a meaningful name, which I'm going to be lazy and not do right now. And I can click OK. Now, as a user coming into this, let's say that you built this little dashboard for them, not them. You added the navigation path for them. And they come in and they're like, oh, it's interesting that department store is so much higher than direct marketing. I wonder how many direct marketing customers I have in here. So I could click on direct marketing, and if I can get the pop-up menu to show up right here, you'll see, come on, the tooltip always on top of where I need it to be. There's a little icon right here. Okay, I'll sneak up on it next time. There's a little icon right here that has, it's hard to see with the resolution as I have set, but it's almost like an arrow set with like a little down arrow on it. So if I click on that one for direct marketing, what you're going to see is I actually only have 3 customers that are doing the direct that we marked as direct marketing customers. So it makes sense that they don't have a big amount of revenue because we only have 3 customers inside of there. If I click back up on it again, so if I click on one of those retailer names and get that pop-up menu to show up, and I use the arrow that's next to it, the back button, it will take it back to the display that I had before. So now as a user, I could come back over here, and again, if I can get the menu, I can drill down on our department store, and I'll see I have way more department stores inside of here. So you can start to navigate and explore your data and get information from your data that you might not have been able to see if you had to know that there was a relationship between those objects that you're doing there. And like I said, I'm not a developer building this necessarily. This is a business user. So a business user can put that relationship in. Now, if you think, oh, I don't want my business users to do that, if you've built this on a data module or you've built it on a package, you can add that into a data module to so that they can just then drag and drop or click on one of those and have it automatically. So you don't have to go back in and do them yourself through there. So in the exercise, there's an example of setting that up so you can get a chance to see what that looks like. So I'm going to, like I said, we're going to, like I said, there's 2 sessions here for this one. If you want to take a look at the exercises, there's a few minutes kind of formally left in this one, plus the break. And then Randy will come around with the second document if you want to work through the relative time. I'll jump back in after. I know there's a couple people joining after this session. So we'll kind of talk about what the relative time looks like and how it got set up. But you'll have some time to work through both sets of the exercises. So if you want to take a look and start here, you should be able to dive in. It starts with kind of exploring an existing dashboard, and then you'll get to go make your own. So does anybody have any questions or comments or thoughts on anything that we looked at or anything you're interested in from there? Okay, so do feel free to start working on the exercise. If you do have to take off, I know sometimes you're not going to stick around, you have to go fight traffic. Just make sure you get a second exercise from Randy, and you should be able to work all of it from home if you need to. So, but do take a look at the exercise. And I'll come around if you have any questions. All right. If you missed the first part and you want to work any of those exercises out, there is you can grab one of the handouts that are around, or Randy can find you one from the beginning. I just wanted to take literally actually 15 minutes this time and not more, even though I lied last time and said I would, and just quickly show you the relative time functionality and how you use it. So how many people did the data modules section this morning or saw the data modules? A lot of you? Okay. So one of the things Ryan showed us near the end of that session is the ease that you can, where you can add the relative time calculations or filters to a data module really simply. And so I wanted to just take 2 minutes to review that. And then I want to show you how to very easily use that functionality in your dashboard. So one of the confusions with that relative time stuff, if you haven't done cubes or any of that kind of old Power Play stuff in the past, this might be brand new to you. But if you've ever had to build a report in authoring or in Report Studio where you had to compare two time periods and you weren't using dimensional data, you'll know that you had to create either complex filters or complex calculations, sometimes multiple queries, often different displays, to try to get that information into your report. So this new feature, which is really quite old in the Cognos world, of relative time calculations and filters, can make all of that a lot easier for you. So without having to go and add dimensional sources to your existing Cognos world, within your data module, you can turn on this relative time functionality and be able to put it into play. So I'm just going to, if I can find my slides here, I'm going to pull those slides up. Where did I put my slides? Oh, yeah, okay. So, like I said, I just wanted to very quickly show you what we have inside of here. So for those of you who have joined, my name is Sonia Fournier, and I'm a senior trainer and consultant with PMsquare. And I've been doing this for longer than I want to admit. So I wanted to show you how to use these relative time filters in dashboards and how to use relative time measures. And one of the biggest, and sort of how to avoid the biggest confusion, which is trying to use both at the same time. So don't do that, and I'll show you how to make this work. So what relative time is in a report is when you want to compare something like this month to last month, or this month to the same month last year. And those are really valuable types of comparisons because we want to be able to, that's how we can tell how we're actually doing. So that's where you get a chance to see, are we, ahead of where we were last year or behind or anything like that. So one of the things, as I said, they added to the data modules is the ability to very quickly add two things: relative time filters and relative time calculations. To do that, they added in a whole bunch of extra stuff that they've pre-built for you that you can quickly reference within your data module. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So one of the things we have to do if we're going to add to a data module, let me jump out of there. So let's build very quickly. So I'm going to very quickly build a data module. This is not part of this course, but so bear with me on that. I'm just going to do the same thing Ryan did this morning and just use that Go Sales report just so we have something really simple to do. So if you followed the demo this morning, these steps are all in the demo. If you didn't follow the demo, we'll send it out. And if you didn't get it, if you weren't in the morning session, and somehow you don't get the demo, let me know, and I'll send you the PDF for it. You can come on up, and I'll give it to you. All right. So when we're working in a data module, we need two things. We need to have a date column that's going to be the date we're going to use to be referenced by the relative time calculations. And we need to have a calendar that we're going to pull this from. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a new data source to our model. And the new data sources actually come from the samples package within IBM. So if you have the newest samples, once you're in 11.1.1, I think, if you have the newest samples package, there's a calendars option inside of there. So you don't have to bring in all the Go Sales stuff if you don't want it, but you probably should bring this calendars one in initially. So it's under the team content, and it comes in at the root of team content as calendars. That may get moved if your administrators have put it somewhere else, or if they haven't brought it in, you can ask them to bring it in, but it's from the demos, or from the samples. And you'll see up here it has a bunch of different calendars. So there's a Gregorian calendar, a fiscal calendar, and then under fiscal calendars, oh, 1 second, let me see if I can change this one more time. Okay. Under the fiscal calendars folder that we have here, you'll see that they have a whole bunch of data modules that have a date on the top of them. So if your fiscal year starts in September, you can switch to one of these. Now, if you have something that's different than that, you can modify any of these data modules and set your own time within here. So I know that I think Ryan mentioned it this morning in data modules. We have at least one of our consultants has gone in, and all their stuff had to be based on I think it was like the previous day or something like that. So if you need to modify it, these are modifiable. They're just data modules that you can set when you're working here. So let's say my year starts April 1st. I can choose April 1st as my fiscal calendar that I'm going to use. It comes in as a linked data module at the top. I don't have to do anything else with that. If it works as it is, I can just leave it. Then I go to my date column, and this is really how easy setting this up is. I go to my date column, I go to properties, and I click under the lookup reference. I change it to the fiscal calendar I just brought in. Okay? As soon as I do that, you'll notice under the little drop down that we have all of these filters that were added. So if I stopped at this point, I still have a lot of benefit in my data module. So if I click on try it, and I very quickly add, let's see, date and product and, I don't know, quantity over here. If I go to the date option here, I have a bunch of filters that have been put together. So in this example, if I switched it to current, let's do current month, and I dragged my filter over and I dropped it on, it's filtering now to look at just August of 2019. That took me about 2 minutes to put together. That wasn't, and you watched it from the beginning. So drag it over, add a fiscal calendar, which comes in as a sample, so you don't have to do anything with those. Set up the lookup reference, and you can drag that filter on. Now, the only kind of gotcha here is these filters are essentially one at a time, right? So if I wanted to have a second list that had like last month's sales, then I would build a second list with a second query, and I would drag that query inside of here. So that might be exactly what you're looking for in your reporting. I want to have one chart with current, and I want to have one chart with last month, or something like that. Now, what if I wanted instead to have quantity of this month, and quantity of last month, and quantity of the same month last year, and I wanted to have them all in one list object? So I can't do a filter at that point, because I want either that or I have to have separate list objects. Or separate queries. So I want to have those calculated columns that I can use here. So I'm going to go back to the data module, and this is equally easy. I can click on quantity, I can go to the lookup reference, and this time I don't point to the fiscal calendar, I point to the date I just set. So I set the date that I have here, it's order date in this case. I come over here and I pick that date column, and you'll notice it expands a folder right here, and I get all of these different calculations, and I'll show you what they look like in just a second. So if I do try it again, and I come back very quickly here, so date, actually, let's do this one a different way. Product, there we go. If I do product, now this time I don't want to put a filter on. I want to see the different numbers showing up in one list. So instead of using the date filters, I go to quantity, and I would like to see current month. I would like to see prior month. I would like to see month to date, prior month to date, and month to date. And so as I drag them in, they'll start to show up inside of here as these different calculate. And it's based on the date that I set this on. So whenever you're setting up relative time in a data module, you set it up for one or more dates, and then you set the reference based on the dates that are there. So that's how you can kind of try it out. In your exercise, you're going to do the two different things. You're going to create a little dashboard that has different charts that are on it, and you'll set filters on some of the dashboards. And then you will set up another one that will display the different measures, so you get a chance to try both within there. You can set up, you can mix them, but as soon as you mix them, you start to restrict the data. So if you put a month to date filter on the list, and then you put this month and last month, you're not going to get any data back. So you just have to be careful. It's usually one or the other. So filters or the calculations when you're in here. Does anybody have any questions on any of those? So setting up the data module to use it, or how we might use it. And I know that's in a report I showed you, but the same concept goes with dashboards. I just want to show you one kind of gotcha with it. So, all right. So you're going to get a chance to try this. I love all your names up here. Let's see if I can find my data module. There we go. So let me show you this very quickly. So there's one thing that I would love to be able to do that I can't do, that I do have to show you kind of this is one of those, wouldn't it be great if you could do that? So once you're editing a dashboard, so you're going to build something similar in your exercise. This is one that I just whipped up. Now, if you've built dashboards before, I don't know if we put them in the exercise that we just did. Did we put a filter in one of the all tabs did I put a filter in all tabs or in the tabs in that last exercise that you just did, some of you? So what would be awesome if I could drag, let's say, month to date and just drop it up here under all tabs? Sadly, that functionality doesn't exist yet. So complain to IBM, let them know that you want that. What I have to do in this case is if I want to put a month to date filter on all of these, I would have to drag and drop month to date on each individual widget that I have on this dashboard. So that's the only limitation to this right now that I can find that's a bit of a pain. So instead of being able to filter the entire tab by one of these relative time filters, you do have to still drop it on each widget. Now, where the power for that comes is you can drop it a different one on each of the widgets. So if you did want to show the difference in of month to date and prior to month to date, it's very easy to drop it on both. But if you want them all to be the same and filtered, you do still have to drop it in on all right now. So that may change, hopefully. But so we're going to build a little demo. You're going to say, I want to see month to date, and you'll drop it on top of the widget you want to filter. And then if I wanted to do prior month to date, I could do that on, again, this doesn't make any sense in this situation. But you could have different filters on each of the widgets on the dashboard that you're looking at. So I'm going to let you take a look at those. But does anybody have any questions or thoughts? Is this something people were missing in the reporting, or something that you were looking for, or you didn't know you wanted it, or any thoughts on how you might use it? You can still use cubes, but you can't bring a cube into a data module, so you wouldn't be able to So you can't add it to cubes. You'd have to add it to cubes the same way you would through Transformer or whatever you might do now. So this functionality, like I said, brand new functionality in 11.1.1 or something like that. This is functionality that was first came out in 1996 in PowerPlay Transformer. So I'm glad we finally caught up to that great Canadian product. All right. Any other questions or thoughts on, even in general dashboards? So anything that you saw in the exercises you wanted to talk about, or anything at all? So if you joined late and you want to work the first exercise as well, I know there was lots of topics going on at the same time, there are copies around, or we can give you a copy of the exercise. And they are pretty you can basically work through them yourself, so it doesn't even have to be today. I mentioned earlier, too, that if our training server will stay up and available, but I do have it running on a schedule, so if you go to the site and it's off, if you shoot training@PMsquare.com an email, we'll turn it back on. It takes about 10 minutes to get it back on if I see the email right away. But we can always turn it on for you. And if the anonymous is turned off, like it will be soon, I'll just send you a user ID and password to get onto it. So do feel free, if you want to redo any of these exercises later, let us know and we can make sure you can have access. So. Yeah, so it should be at the very end of each of the exercises. There's both my contact information and then they both come to me. So so training@pmsquare.com, or you can get hold of me at sfournier@pmsquare.com. And if you like what you saw on the dashboards and you want it to have more knowledge, or you want to share this with your users or anything like that, we do have a one-day dashboards class that also includes dashboards and the story tool, which is kind of like a PowerPoint presentation that you can set up that's still interactive. So we do a one-day training class that kind of aim it at the business user level. It's very similar to what you would see here, but we can also make it more developer-friendly if you wanted it to be for a developer group. And we also have a one-day data modules class that would have that is aimed more at kind of more technical users that we can kind of dumb down for business users if we need to kind of make it more user-friendly, that we can do for these. And then we have if you are interested in training at all, come find me and talk. It's my favorite thing to talk about. So come find me at any of the events, and I'm happy to sort of talk about what we have. And we have our catalog kind of ready to go, that if you're looking for something, we do both on-site like this, where we would come into your organization and do a real live class. And I wear fancy clothes, and that's all great. Or we'll do an online class where I'll be in my yoga pants and sitting in my basement, and you can hear my dog barking. So, but they both run the same way. So interactive. You can still get my great jokes. It's really fun. So yeah, just come and find me if you have any questions. You can work through the second exercise. I'm here to help if you need anything. And then just after the session, remember that we're going to move downstairs to. I don't know what the name of the restaurant is, but as you come in the door downstairs, Mr. D's, is that what it is? Yeah, whatever it is called, is right down below us down here. Somebody will guide you. There'll be like you got here originally. Somebody will guide you back out, and it's usually a lot of fun. So we'll all be around. If you have questions, you can certainly ask us. Do you have a? Yep.
It's really simple, but you want to show the pinning thing because they can't do it.
Oh yeah. Yep. Absolutely. What? Never.
Once I hit something I like, it's saved. So if it does crash, I can bring it back. And I think it's a very valuable thing and something you want to do early and often. But you can't do it as an anonymous user, so you can't do it kind of hands-on in this exercise. So I think it'd be good to see it.
Awesome.
Difficult, just good to know it's there.
Yeah. So just very quickly, so like Randy said, this is a new feature within dashboards within Cognos 11, where you have the concept of pinning an object. So if you see something you like, if you're exploring your data, if your users are exploring your data, you don't even have to be in developer mode. If you're in business user mode here, there's the option to pin. And as I said, I'm actually signed in as myself right now. This will work for me. but in your world, you're kind of fake users right now. So we can pin it. It will process the pin. And then when I'm in as a developer here, and I'm editing a dashboard, you have the pin option over here on the side, and everything you have kind of clicked on or said, I like that visualization, or I've pinned that visualization, it's keeping a copy. It's not the actual chart object itself, but it's the specification as it existed when you hit the pin. So if I build a report and I like the visualization, I can pin it and then drag it back into my display, and it will show up here exactly as it was. Now, what's nice with this is if I put a filter on it and pin it again, then I have two different versions of that same thing, and I can drag the other version over. So if you're filtering, you can pin different versions and then drag them in within here. And you can drag it into stories as well as dashboards. So they're kind of available copies that you can work with from there. So yeah, good point. And I'm sorry, that's the only thing that we kind of came across really that you can't do as an anonymous user, that you can do as a signed in user. So the steps are there and you have them in your exercise, but you won't be able to do it here. So any other questions or thoughts or comments or anything else I missed? Yeah. Awesome. Yep. Yeah. So if you have multiple dates, you would have to. So let me put a star on that. If you have multiple dates, and you would point to the calendar that you want it to use. You would bring it so, and then it would be set for that particular date, and you want to make sure you label them what they are. On the measures, I think you can only point to one of those dates. So you might have to have multiple copies of a measure if you want to have it done by different dates. So if you wanted to have, both order date and shipping date, you'd have to have 2 copies of revenue in that case. So, but you should be able to do it. It should still work. Yep. I haven't looked at the SQL behind it. I think so. I think it's a lookup, not a join. But I haven't played around with it enough. Have you looked at it, Randy? Or I don't think so. I don't think it shouldn't matter in that case. As far as I know, it's a lookup, but I'm not. Yeah, I haven't pulled it apart. So it's because data modules doesn't expose the SQL to you, you'd have to take it into report authoring and then go into the query, like build something with it, look at the query and see what it's doing. But that's my understanding. But again, that's just a knowledgeable guess. I don't know. Right. Yeah. No. So yeah, you can kind of have to fake it with different queries and that stuff. But yeah. So yeah, good question for that. Any other questions or thoughts or comments or anything at all? Yeah. Go ahead. Yep. No. In the version you have right now, there wasn't an option to do this, but in so you mean to the templates that you're looking for? So is there a better template display? So one of the issues before 11.1. Maybe 2, I'm not sure what, like somewhere in 11.1, is that when you went to the display part of this, and you'll see it here, when I'm on my laptop, if my resolution's not awesome, this is what it looks like when I'm trying to work with it. In one of these later versions, or newer versions, there's some different canvas positions that come in that you can set. And there's a screen fit, but there's also a fit to page. And the fit to page will then rejig based on whatever screen size you're on. So it might not be perfect, but it's way better than what we had originally. So we used to have to really move everything around to make sure it was in the right spot. This new fit to page really does, like as you can see, without doing a whole lot, I can actually see everything on there right now. So now we're like with your report with all the data on there, like with the list, that I don't know what it's going to do in that case once we get to 11. The ones, maybe it will, I don't know if it'll squish it or if it'll be too hard to read, but the fit to page might help in that case. And then there is some different screen presets. So you know, if you know that it's always going in a certain display or it's getting kind of sent out, you can change the resolution kind of through here as well. So again, so I don't think there's an answer to is there a better one, but this will fix a lot of those issues when you're looking at that. Good. Any other questions on anything at all with, I don't know, I'm even happy, I'll answer any of your questions on Cognos as long as you stay away from planning. I'm good. I know my limitations. We're good. All right, so you can work the exercise in any of the remaining time we have. And like I said, just if you have questions on any of it, please let me know, and I'll come around if you have anything else. So.